One of the hardest parts about being a designer actually has nothing to do with the design work itself. It has everything to do with preparing, documenting, and handing off your designs for development. If you're building websites, mobile applications, and web apps, then this is going to be a huge part of your life, and you need to have a process for it. So in this video, I'm going to share with you some of my favorite tips and tricks for documenting, preparing, and handing off for development. Let's start by talking about some of the biggest mistakes that designers will make, some of the biggest issues that we'll run into as we are handing off our designs to developer teams. And it starts with this question on the left. Why don't you know what I'm thinking? We tend to be in our design files for a really long time. We organize them in a certain way. We use certain tools and techniques, and we just expect that the developers are going to understand that it's going to be self-explanatory to them. But guess what? They're not omniscient. They're not mind readers. They don't understand what we were thinking because it's not their daily thing that they do. And so we need to use these 4 C's that we're going to talk about right now to help them understand what we're thinking, starting with the very first one, which is communication. Communication is by far the hardest part about designing. Clients and teams, they need you and I as designers to take a lead. And so one might say, if you ever feel like you're not over communicating, then you are most definitely under communicating, and you need to start communicating more. Communication is going to open up the pathways of understanding, and it's going to just grease the wheels and make projects a little bit better. Number 2 is clarity. Just because it's clear to you doesn't mean it's not foggy to somebody else. So it's our job to simplify, explain, document, confirm. And for any of us designers that are out there going, that's not my job, it definitely is your job. You need to clarify what your expectations are and what's inside of your designs. Number 3 is concepts. There needs to be some shared understanding of concepts or terms. When I say homepage, do you know what I mean by homepage? Obviously. But when I say card, do you know what I mean when I say card? Maybe. And so we need to create this shared language of concepts, and often we can do that through patterns and systems and structures, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Lastly, we need to talk about consistency. You need to do these first 3 things: communicate, clarify, and create shared concepts over and over again. The more that you do this, the easier your projects are going to be, the more that development teams are going to enjoy working with you. And so you need to start to master these 4 C's, doing them over and over again, and life is just going to go a whole lot better for you. There is a famous Chinese proverb that says this: it's better to light a candle than to curse the darkness. But so many designers just curse the darkness. They curse the confusion and not realize that the confusion is one of their own making. It also says this in the Christian New Testament, Philippians chapter 2. It says, "Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourself." Here's a crazy idea. Other people's time is valuable, not just yours. So if I consider the developer's time as valuable, if I take that extra step, go that extra mile, and make their job a little bit easier by doing my job to the fullest, it's going to end up being a good thing for everybody. And so let's take a look at some methods and some ways that we can do this. Let's start first with some very simple methods for accomplishing these 4 C's and combating bad communication and improving our handoff and delivery process. We can just do simple methods. Now, to those of you who have been in the design game for a long time, these are going to seem really underwhelming, but maybe some of you have never done any of these, like shared your Figma file or put robust amount of comments inside of it. You can use something like the Figma chat plugin. You can redline your designs to make sure that all spacing and alignment and everything is documented. You can leave note components inside of your file, or you can link Loom videos. I'm especially a fan of that last one because if a picture is worth 1,000 words, then a video is worth 1,000,000. A 4-minute Loom video can save you a 30 or 1 hour long meeting, and it can clarify a lot of things and reduce the amount of confusion. And so if you haven't done any of these things, it's a pretty good place to start. I want to jump over to a Figma file and just show you a real basic structure. And we're going to start looking at some more complex structures of design files files as we go. I just want to point out a couple of tips for you that you'll probably see throughout the rest of this video. Number one, inside of my Figma file, I've separated things into pages. This is a consistent practice for me so that I can create some of that shared language. When I say the empty states or product and sales pages or category and search, I have an address to go with it. That way I don't say category and search and the developers or stakeholders go, where is that? What is that? I can just simply say, that's address 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. Why don't you meet me there and we can discuss those designs that are happening and I can clarify things for you. Right off the bat, just a little bit of shared language is a nice thing to have. On top of that shared language, creating some navigational structures is also really, really helpful. In most of my design files that I hand off, you will see large labels or headers on top that match that address. So here we are at 100. Those are your components. If I go over to the home page here, that's in the 2000 address, and we just have one long address there. But if I go over to category and search, that's the address of 3000. You'll notice as I zoom in, I have 3000, but I have some subheaders down here. This is 3100. That's search. If I scroll over, you'll see I have 3200, 3300. And so we get more and more specific. Maybe something lives within a category or a flow, but there's subflows to it. Well, we need to organize those things. Also throughout this file, you will see probably lots and lots of comments over here on the right-hand side. I like a robust conversation to happen in my design files. And so you'll see that I'm practicing what I'm preaching, and you should probably practice these things as well. You just want as much documentation as you possibly can. Let's talk about some increased complexity when it comes to your handoff techniques. We're going to move into inspect mode or dev mode, depending on whatever tool you're using. This is going to allow our development teams to actually inspect code elements, to see styles or variables, to measure things or download assets without having to ask you, hey, can I get a PNG of this thing? It'll also allow them to get a handle or an idea about some sort of simple design system or component library you've established, and even inspect the grid to figure out how you are operating. You can take this a step further with some deeper documentation, create systems, pattern libraries, structures, start to group things together like I've shown you in even more in-depth ways inside of work streams or workflows. You can annotate and document specific functionality, and you can even declare the status of something and annotate integrations potentially. Now, if you want to take this to the next level, you might even consider prototyping this. Obviously, prototyping is a great idea because it brings a level of clarity. It's going to show developers or stakeholders how you get from point A to point Z in some sort of clickable prototype. You can do that inside of Figma or whatever design tool you're using. You can use third-party tools like usertesting.com. You can introduce missions and journeys and even introduce some feedback forms. And if you want to go to the very top shelf level, you can consider learning how to use some no-code tools like Webflow or Framer or Bravo Studio or Bubble. And you can actually create dynamic prototypes that you can actually use. That's going to be a whole next step and a separate video, but I wanted to show you the progression of complexity before we dive in and take a look at some more examples of design files as they move up in complexity. I want to take a moment to tell you about a really cool product and the sponsor of this video, and that's PostHog. PostHog is an all-in-one suite of product and data tools that's about to change the game. Imagine having product analytics and session replays and A/B testing and surveys all in one place. That's basically PostHog in a nutshell. It works seamlessly with every platform and all of your favorite no-code tools like Framer and Webflow, so it's perfect for people of all technical skill levels. And PostHog has just released their web analytics tool, which is basically like Google Analytics, but way more powerful and way simpler to use. It's awesome. You'll get a comprehensive overview of your site, and you get to understand different paths and track your traffic sources. Plus, you can easily set up and measure goals right inside of PostHog. The best part is you can use all of these amazing features for free up to 1 million events. That's right, you heard me right. 1 million events. That's an absolute ton. So if you want to supercharge your website or your application, hit the link down in the description. Go check out PostHog at posthog.com. Different projects require different deliverables depending on the complexity or the experience of your developer team or the needs of your stakeholders. You're going to have to be able to scale up from simple deliverables to more complex deliverables. So in this segment, I'm going to show you some examples of varying degrees of complexity in projects that I've worked on and delivered. Let's jump right over to Figma, and you see this is a project that I worked on. It is a web application, and we can actually jump right over here. You can see screens. This is really low impact, really easy. They needed a turnaround in a couple of days or a week, and I worked on this. And you can see I've just labeled things as what those flows are. Here's a dashboard flow. Here's a blueprint flow. Here's a create flow. Here's a managing an environment flow. And we just have the screens laid out here. Nothing's redlined. They really just want to depend on something like dev mode so their teams could interact with the design. And they just needed some basic elements kind of like established, some components. And so I created a really scrappy component library, probably as scrappy as you can imagine. I did create a design guide. This design guide documents colors, typography, and a little bit of the iconography here so that developers could scroll in here and they can see all of the different values that are being used for this project. But you can see I also have a pattern library created. When I open that up, you're going to see how messy this pattern library truly is. It's just a collection of components. And this feels really underwhelming, but this is what this client needed. They just wanted the components. They were very well versed and comfortable inside of Figma. They love dev mode. They don't need complex red lines or documentation. I just handed this off with a couple of Loom videos explaining everything, walking through everything. And then I think I integrated a little bit of a meeting with them, a bit of a handoff meeting to explain things and answer any questions. That is very low hanging fruit, very simple. Let me take you to another project that ramps it up just a little bit more. We have in this project the cover page, obviously. Then we have all of the mobile designs on this page, smartwatch designs on this page, and we built an entire pattern library and style guide mixed together. Again, different request from the client and their developer teams. This is what they wanted. But in this case, we've documented the typography, the colors, and the iconography. And we were a little bit more structured now about the different components. We've actually put them in categories, so it's actually visually appealing. It's easy for them to scan. We got a couple of fields here, a couple of cells, a couple of buttons, a tab bar, a player, and some profile stuff. Not really excessive. Not what you would call a full-fledged design system in any way, but these are the most common used elements, and they just wanted those documented. Now, when we get into the actual design file itself, you'll see that we're abiding by all of those same principles we've already talked about. We're laying things out in flows from top to bottom and left to right. We are naming and addressing those flows. We have used the native capability here inside of Figma to mark things as ready for dev so that the developers can just come in here inside of dev mode and get a really quick, simple, easy view. We also have prototyped pretty much this entire design together so the development teams and stakeholders are able to interact with it. Now that's just a slight step up. There's no real design system created yet, but we can take a glance at another project that's one more step up. And in that previous project, we had things like local styles, whereas in this project, we actually created an entire variable set. And you can see all of the designs laid out from left to right, addresses on top, things that are marked for dev, ready for dev. And you'll notice that in the top right-hand section, we're able to take this entire design and move it from light mode over to dark mode. That's because everything has been dialed in inside of a TrueBlue design system file, a separate file for them. This was the request from this client and their development teams. So when we move over to look at their actual design system, you can see here that we've broken everything up by atoms, molecules, and organisms. And as I click into that, I can see here's the brand elements, all of the color elements and documentation here, typography, iconography, and then we move into molecules. So you'll see individual components like alerts and buttons and chips and inputs and lists, all of that. As we start to build those atoms and molecules into larger elements like cards and charts and notifications and all of these different elements. And you'll notice that everything here is actually using the variable set. We've built out tokens and everything, design tokens using local variables. This is much more of a complex system because we're using a primitive system and a semantic token system. So again, way more advanced than just a loose design file with designs laid in there and a couple of components splattered around. Now you've seen the range of design handoff as it starts to scope up to more complex, more communicative, more clarity. And again, this depends on the type of client or development teams you're working with. A couple things to note here, some things you might think about adding onto any and every project. These are not necessary for any and all projects, but they're nice to have. Let's start in this file, and you can see it's nice to always have some sort of documentation cover on your project. So we can see if that project is in progress, what's the name of the project, describe the project, maybe a visual of it, and which team is working on it, which month or year does this file represent. Again, sometimes design files can get very, very complex. There could be a lot of them, a lot of iterations on files or duplicates of files. So having some sort of documentation cover can be very, very helpful. Then it can also be nice to have an about this project section. You can see that this about this project section would give details on the project name and the designer's email that was working on it, and description of the team and the project objective and things like work streams. When did work take place inside of this file? Relevant documents. We can put links here directly inside of Figma and most other design tools as well. If we have a problem statement, we could place that there. Business case and how might we statement, as well as product goals, design principles, and the scope. The idea of the about this project page is to give anybody that's new to the project a snapshot of what we're trying to accomplish, and they can have some context with the content. Let's jump over to something like research and mood boards. You might have a page where you just lay out a style tile, a mood board. It could be a messy mood board, a structured mood board, a full-blown style tile. It's up to you. Also, a popular way of organizing files would be in the different versions with the date listed next to them. So you can see I have a separator here. Now we're into the design world, and I have version 1 with all of its documentation, and then I would have a space for further versions to take place. Now let's dive into this design file because there's a couple of extra things happening here. We have an entire note page next to it. I can put links in here, an overview of what's happening in this design. And we also have a work stream with an address. This is a much more advanced work stream. When I say the word work stream, I mean those headers, those addresses. You can lay these into something called work streams. I can see if the work is complete or has been handed off. I can title this. I can dictate what release it is with a little description and who the owner is. If it connects to a Jira ticket, I could actually link that. There's a copy doc involved or illustration folder or any other assets that I could list out here. Now, what's really fun, and I don't often do, but I have been known to do it from time to time, is that you can actually turn this entire system into a component system so that we could simply click on something like release 2.0 and we could change the color or the status of it really, really quickly. This is a lot more detailed than just relying on marked ready for dev inside of the Figma platform. So now that we have that, we can actually drop down and see we have an entire section for prototypes. We might have our versions of prototypes here, separating everything by flow. That way we don't have our design file be all messy, and we can have a separate place to do all of this smart animation or interactivity. The last thing you might consider placing inside of your document is a documentation and specs page. This is where we get into specific screens that needs specific communication and clarity. So I'd be able to take a specific screen as noted here, and I can start to annotate and call certain things out. I like to depend quite a bit on dev mode or inspect mode. I don't like to do red lines, although some people love that. I like to just really rely on dev mode for the majority of the work. But if there's specific call outs like dynamic buttons or interactions that need to happen or something that leads back to the design system, then I can go ahead and annotate that there. We can do that in a singular format here with notes on the bottom. We can have multiple screens. You can see you can do it with web apps, mobile apps, and again, you can include that notes file. This is is a lot of different tips and tricks and ways and things that you can implement. Consider each and every one of them like a tool inside of your toolbox. You don't need every tool when you're building all your projects. You might need some tools for some of those projects. So deciding which tools to use, I leave that up to you. Well, that's it. That's an absolute ton of information and tips and tricks about design to development handoff. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. I do tons of videos about design and development and even documentation and handoff, just like this one. So make sure you ring the bell so you know when another video comes out. If you have any questions, leave those down in the comments and make sure to check the description for a ton of helpful links and resources on the topic, as well as a link to the sponsor of this video, which is PostHog. Thanks to them for sponsoring the video. Definitely check them out. I hope you're having an amazing week. I hope you're designing amazing things, making amazing things. We'll see you in the next one.